Brothers and sisters, I come before you today with a dream. I have a dream that one day will stop the shame of Jamaican patois. I have a dream that one day will stop embarrassing and shaming people who proudly speak Jamaican patois. I have a dream that one day you can walk into the bank and do the interview into patois. I have a dream that one day you will go to the ATM machine and you can choose your language to be English or patois. But until that day, brothers and sisters, we live in an island that continue to shame people for speaking our indigenous language. Until that day, brothers and sisters, yes, here we are, Fabian Seh, number 2. And we're going to have to put up with the whirring of the fan in the background and the little AC we are on because I tried to record it without them and it were hot and I started to sweat and I am not about that life. So yes, so I'm going to go on record and say Jamaica is, I'm sure, probably one of the only, if not the only countries that has such abject shame and disrespect for its own indigenous language. Really, people? Really? In 2018, we need to go on better. We're shaming people and disparaging people because they speak our language, because them talk patois. I rebuke it in the name of Louise Bennett Coverley. I rebuke it in the name of my grandparents and our forefathers. I rebuke it. English, fine, yes, purists, don't jump down my throat. English is based on our history, the history of rape, plundering, colonization, slavery, capitalism, all these things. English is a language of business and commerce. It is not the most spoken language in the world. That would be Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, I believe, for they have the biggest population. So English is not the most spoken language. But yeah, we can use English and master English. But why do we have to shame people who speak patois or who speak more patois than others or who speak only patois? Why can't we celebrate both? We are a bilingual country and we need to accept and embrace that. And as opposed to embarrassing people, use English, use patois, people who speak patois, and help them learn English. Use patois as the pathway to English in our education system. That makes more sense than embarrassing people and telling them, oh, you're dunce and you sound uneducated and unschooled and blah blah blah, and embarrassing people for the way they speak, which is encouraging people to twang. Why do you think so much of our athletes and singers and all these other people twang? People twang because they are ashamed of how they sound and how they speak. So they're gonna try to fix up how them sound to make it acceptable. Do you hear speakers of Spanish twanging? You hear African people twanging? You hear other people, you hear Chinese people twanging? People who are proud of, who have been socialized and cultured into recognizing that the sound of their language has beauty and grace and music and magic, do not twang. They don't need to. So my thing is, if you have a beautiful, thick Jamaican accent, like my runner Asafa Powell, make them subtitle you. Subtitle you like everybody else, as opposed to you fixing how you sound so people can access it. None of that. Mash down that lie. And guess what? English complicated, you know. And as Miss Lou said, if English derive from all these other languages it borrow from, why we must be a corruption of English? Out of orderness. We derive too. Patois is a beautiful mixture of direct African retentions in Jamaican reality, mostly Shui, TWI, and mix up with, a little bit of English and Spanish and the other languages and flavors that influenced us. But Patois is a good up, acceptable, beautiful language that is expressive and actually catches some things better than English. But we accept and we kneel at the holy grail of the English language. And don't get me wrong, I speak English. I learned English. I was taught English. I was born in England. So English is my first language as an English-born speaker. But my parents made sure that I understood, respected the value of patois, And when I moved to Jamaica when I was 7, me jump in and start the twang now, trying to mask my English accent and talk patois. There's no need to shame people. And we accept English as this kind of sacrosanct thing. And there's all these rules and things in English that don't make no sense, that we bow down to. I mean, who makes up these rules? So for instance, now, let us speak now. All of us English speakers. How many of you remember and can tell me off the top of your head what is past participle? What is future perfect? Do you ever use it? And when you use it, do you know you're using it? Some of the rules. English hard. Some of the rules don't make no sense. Pluralization, for example. Why is there no one set rule? So to pluralize in English, you have ES, you add S. Some things is EN, some things is a double I, some things have no plural form. Who makes up these rules? Why is the plural of mouse mice but the plural of house is not heis? Who sets up these things? In patois, there is a simple rule of pluralization. You take the singular form of the noun and you add them. Pluralize. Boom. So yeah, mouse them, house them, man them, tree them, radius them. Simple. In English, singular you, plural you. In patois, singular you, plural uno. So there are rules and structures and the ways to function in patois that we need to embrace, learn, and accept. Now, I love the fact that patois is being codified, because the challenge is until you're codified, you can't be translated into anything, and there's no set way of spelling. So if 10 of us write 10 patois words, we're going to spell it the way we see it. What codification does is that it sets up a structure. Now, the reality is that the system that has been chosen, which is the most phonetically accurate, which is the Cassidy, I believe, is hard. It's hard because it's the phonetic representation of the sounds versus just mimicking English. Now, there's power and rebellion in that, because if you're mimicking English, you're still using English as your correct base, as your blueprint. So, this letter is missing here. That's why we have a little apostrophe here. So what the phonetic representation gives us is that it allows the language to stand on its own 2 feet. And that's really, really important. I mean, as I shared in the earlier video, I worked in a school where the principal kept making a point on the PA system that English spoken here, and that patois was this bad, horrible, awful thing. And it was a language of the unrefined. It was a language of butos. And sometimes the girls were called that. And I'm like, what? So you're telling a young lady in this particular school that the language her mother and grandmother may speak makes them less than, devalues them. How do we get there? We are Jamaica, this bold, mighty dot on the map that everybody wants to mimic and be like. And we branded the terms brand Jamaica all over the place. But yet on some level, we really think that when people are speaking patois, they're dunce. They're unrefined. They're speaking that because they don't know any better. There are actually some people who master the English, but choose to speak patois. So we have people on one end of the spectrum who speak pure patois. A deep patois that has a lot of African retentions in it. That, we from Kingston go to them parish and say, could you repeat, or ask them to slow down. The other end of the spectrum are Jamaicans who speak mostly or only Jamaican standard English. Because we're not speaking the Queen's English, because it's our received language. So it mixes up with Jamaican colloquial and all these things. The people in the middle are perfectly bilingual. And know how to code switch. And most of us know how to code switch. And that's important because that's part of your identity. Communication and language expresses who you are and your value. And if we're telling ourselves and our children that, hey, this language lessens you, makes you dunce and devalues you, or tells them, okay, you can't be a success in the world if you only speak patois or if you don't master English. And that's just not true. Do you know how many jobs would open up if we had more Jamaicans trained formally in patois and how to translate it and use it and teach it? When I was working at Sandals, I remember when I got there, the Jamaican patois class was a series of insults. That was what the patois class was. Mampi, Sketel, Dotigal. That was what the guests were being taught was Jamaican patois. And I said, oh no, my people, mash down that lie. And I did a proper structured lesson on Patois that went from the west coast of Africa and looked at the language and came over and then looked at the development of Patois, the how it came about, and look at contemporary Patois, look at Patois in dancehall, Patois in modern day language, and did an evolution. Of course, it made the session much longer, but the guests loved it. The guests stayed because at first my playmakers were like, "Sir, this is going to be long and boring, and the guests are not gonna like it." Well, the guests loved it, and after a while, so did my playmakers, and I trained them so they were able to deliver this language, this session of value, honoring our language, not minimizing it to 3 or 4 insults. We have to do better. We have to do better. When I was at that same school, I had the girls ask, "Sir, we can do the skit in Patois? We can write some stuff in Patois?" And I tell them, yes, because we are bilingual. So we're going to master English, but also master and respect and understand Patois. So we are fumbling the ball, because in one of the classes I said something, we're talking about a show, and I said the character, even though they were being hurt, that they were laughing. And I say, in Jamaica, we say, take kin teeth, keep a hard bun. And the girls went, "Sir, what that? How can I want people to think that? What that mean?" And I said, "Aha, homework." And I wrote on the board, "Take keen teeth, keep a hot bun." And I said, homework, go and research, talk to your grandmother and some other people. And one of the girls them said, "Sir, my granny a hot girl. She don't know nothing about them old people things." And she said, "Can I show you her on my phone?" And she took out her phone, and verily, granny was at Gala Road. So I said, "Well, find some other people, older people who you can talk to." We have to pass down our traditions. We have to tell the stories, and we have to make it sexy. Because guess what? We are competing with video games that are amazing, the graphics, the engagement. We're competing with pop songs and culture from all over the world, in our context, predominantly America. We're competing with videos and books and anime and all this stuff. And if our stuff is all old school and what the kids see as boring, of course we're going to lose them. So we have to have some engagement and endeavors that contemporizes the thing, makes it interesting, makes it sexy, engages our young people, so we pass it on, so we honor it, so they respect it, so they know more than just Miss Lou. They know about other writers who are writing in Patois and using Patois. So they know about Jean Binta Breeze, and they know about Mutabaruka, Benjamin Zephaniah, Linton Kwesi Johnson, Lorna Goodison, Mervyn Morris. They know about poets who are using Patois in poetry, in prose, but they also are introduced to speakers, people who are using language, including Patois, and honoring it and respecting it. Or it's gonna die out. We're gonna lose it because of the shame. I'm gonna touch upon the uptown, downtown, who dance and who bright thing, because that's so old school and so boring, and so we need to get rid of that. But I am here as a champion for Patois. Talk the things, respect it, let's love it, explore it, research it, sing about it, write about it, talk about it, honor it, unearth the history, and the stories behind it, and the colors and all of that stuff. And not just during JCDC festival, and not just have the kids come into the same Miss Lou poem, because as adjudicator, if me hear Uriah preach one more time, it's like we're choosing from this really narrow basket of stuff that's in there, and there's so much more, for us. Those of us who may teach English or teach English literature, use up the dancehall song then, use the reggae lyrics, use the lyricism and the poetry that people who are writing in Patois are using, and apply, academic structure and research and analysis to it, and watch how much better our passes will get. And we'll not just be getting better passes, but people will be standing taller, feeling prouder about their language and who they are. Stop shaming people who talk Patois. Let's use it as a bridge to teach English if that's what we're about, or just allow people, let them talk how them talk, and stop giggling and laughing. Drop your H, because in Patois we drop H. It's called hypercorrection. Is a thing. But my thing is, if we want to say that we're committed to having people function and be able to be bilingual in the world, Well, let's do that, but not by dishonoring and shaming and disrespecting Patois, but by saying this is a valid, beautiful, authentic way of speaking. English is another, not one over the other. So my people, that was Fabian Seh, my little take on the good up Patois. We'll talk again soon. Peace, love, light, and blessings.